whether you like to think it or not. We have an enemy, and his whole efforts and everything he's going to do will be directed to getting us back to thinking about ourselves and where we're at and what's our problems and how the mountains that are in front of us look. In fact, if you've ever been anywhere near the mountains, like the Rocky Mountains, a range like that, the size of them is incredible. They overwhelm you how big they are. And a lot of our issues in life are just as real and just as big as those mountains. So we struggle and we think, how are we ever going to overcome that? The only way we're ever going to overcome is if we start to think in terms of God's perspective.
You promise you have a plan, so use this for your glory.
We have to align ourselves with how does God see things? What is God seeing? And Paul encourages us in Colossians 3, verse 2. He says, don't shuffle along, eyes to the ground, absorbed with the things right in front of you. Look up and be alert to what is going on around Christ. That's where the action is. See things from his perspective. That's from the Message. See things from his perspective. That's where the action is. If we keep focusing on ourselves, if we keep focusing from a ground level, we're going to be discouraged, we're going to be hopeless, we're going to feel like, what's the use? Well, I tried this Christian thing and it doesn't work. But we have to understand that we are seated in heavenly places. I mean, it happened with Peter after the revelation in Matthew 16, where Jesus said, "Are you who do people say I am?" And he said, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And then Jesus, complimented him and said, "Blessed are you, Peter, for man hasn't taught you this, but it's been revealed to you by my Father." He had revelation. And then he said, "And upon that rock, upon this revelation, I'm going to build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it." But yet, shortly afterwards, Jesus is talking to him about what's going to happen, giving him God's perspective and the whole plan, the redemption of the community. And Peter then starts to say, "Oh, no." He takes him aside and he says, "This will never happen to you. This can't happen to you." But Jesus has to rebuke him, and he says to him in Matthew 16:23, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the things of God, but the things of men." In fact, the complete Jewish Bible puts it this way. They say, your thinking is from a human perspective, not from God's perspective. It is so essential that we start to develop a discipline in our lives where we're going, am I looking from God's perspective here, or am I looking at it from man's perspective? Am I really catching the way things are happening? Do I really see it that way? Because when you start to, you'll understand things so completely differently. It'll give you hope. It'll release faith. It'll release courage. And so we're going to talk in the next session, in the next talk, about how do you then foster that kind of perspective? How do you keep that kind of perspective? And that will be the topic for the next time.